Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Not D&D. As is October, we're focusing on creepier RPGs and horror-themed ones, and who better to join us than Nils, one of the creators on the Walking Dead role-playing game. Nils, thanks so much for coming back on the show.
Yeah, great to be here.
Last year we were talking, you came here in June 2022, and we were talking about Vassen as well. And so congratulations for all the awards that game picked up at the Ennies this year, and you know, it's done fantastically well. So it's great to see that game kind of grow and get bigger and better constantly. But at Free League, you're always creating new and wonderful things. So we're talking about The Walking Dead here today. I'm so excited about it. I'm such a big fan. I've been reading and collecting the graphic novels since about 2016. And I know the role-playing game is based off the lore in kind of the AMC TV show. So have you been a fan of The Walking Dead for a while? Was that exciting to get on this project from that perspective?
Yeah, I've been for quite a while. I would say for some while I had difficulties watching the show when it came because I kind of easily scared myself. So I thought it was really creepy.
Right. Okay.
But then when I started watching it and reading the comics and stuff, I loved it so much. So yeah, definitely fan.
Perfect. That's absolutely great. Well, as always, I normally dig into the guest backgrounds and role-playing games, but because you've been on the show before, we've heard that before, and if people are interested, they can go back. It was June 2022 you're on previously, but instead I wanted to ask you about the last year in games that you've had. So between now and June 2022, what have your gaming highlights been? Have you been in any good campaigns or seen any good games? What games have you been playing?
Yeah, I play in several different groups. So I have one group where there's one person who he wants to play all old games. So we're playing right now. We're playing like the old Marvel superheroes using like the old rules, and that was really fun doing because I played that when I was a kid as well. So so that is one campaign that is ongoing. And I also play with another group, kind of a steampunk fantasy faith campaign about two shoemakers, actually.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, they have a leather and shoe store, and then from that things have just erupted and become really strange. But it's kind of based on a really low level fantasy, and it just got weirder and weirder. So that has been a nice kind of development of the campaign. And then I play a lot of Apocalypse World. I tend to do that always. I have an old friend who moved to another city several years ago, and we have our friendship is about kind of playing Apocalypse World over and over again. So I keep playing that.
Yeah. Perfect. So they're the big highlights of the year. And then of course working on stuff with Free League, I imagine, in your work life, and testing and playing games as well.
Yeah, play testing, Walking Dead, of course. Yeah. Played several campaigns. So yeah.
So the Kickstarter has happened, and the books are, I think, set to be with backers in November sort of time at the moment, so about a month away. But there is the website. It's the walkingdead-rpg.com, where if you can do a late pledge there, or you can find out more of the information. So if whilst we're talking you want to look that up, all the links are kind of on there, which is a good place for you to go. But talking about jumping into talking about The Walking Dead, so why we're here. So I wanted to talk about the game because my assumption is, of course, the game will use the Year Zero engine, the kind of D6 version of that, which all of Free League's games have. So if people have played Free League's games, they'll be familiar. But with every kind of different game you do, you kind of tweak and edit the system so it fits the setting. So it's kind of thematic. So I wondered if you could talk through what The Walking Dead does with the system mechanically.
Yeah, there are some tweaks. One tweak is that you only have like 3 hit points, so
gosh,
it's so I think it's you more easily die in this game. You more easily so the combats are often really short. It's just like a mash up, and then someone dies, and then it ends. And there aren't any kind of talents to give you more health points and protect you more, and it should be a game where characters easily die. And at the same time, there's kind of a foundation or a base in the beginning of creating the characters, which kind of creates a haven with 5 NPCs and relationships among them. So my idea is to kind of build a start where you feel a lot for your character and for the NPCs and for your relationships, and it's also really easy to die. And I think that combination it's exciting when you kind of have invested a lot of emotions and energy and so forth in your character, and you have this big risk all of the time. So that is one thing. And then there is, of course, the system for pushing rolls that is almost always in the year 0 game, where you can kind of re-roll, but it always costs something. And I've taken a lot from the Alien games of the stress mechanic, but it's not exactly the same.
Sure.
In this system, it's kind of you can push rolls, but then you get a stress die that you need to roll on all skill rolls. You can also get stress die by simply experience something that is really stressful, being attacked by a walker, for instance. So you kind of collect these stress dice that you get to roll for the skill roll. So you kind of, by getting stressed, you get better at doing things. But in the end, you will eventually roll a walker, like a 1 on the die. And rolling a walker means messing up.
Okay.
And messing up could mean a number of things. I mean, if you watch the TV series, many of the things that happen there is, for some things go kind of smoothly, but then someone drops something and the walkers hear it, or Daryl is about to ride away, but there's a snake that scares the horse and it rides off, and a lot of trouble kind of happens from people messing up. So this is a part where the game master can kind of be creative and kind of build on what's happening. In what way could you possibly mess up? There's kind of a recommendation, like in the first sessions, you can always go with you kind of alert walkers. That is one way you can always mess up. If you have an argument trying to manipulate someone, you're getting too loud without noticing it, and suddenly you kind of hear them coming. So that is one mechanic, and the way to kind of get rid of stress rolls is of course relationships, being close to other people. So those are kind of for the scenes. There's so many scenes in this TV series where people kind of get close and find each other and have a drink together, or have a smoke together, or those are instances where I'm thinking they are now kind of relieving stress. So that is the mechanic. You do those kind of things to handle your stress.
Fantastic. So going back to the characters, the people you're playing. So anyone that's familiar with the Walking Dead universe, it's post-apocalyptic, but you're playing just real normal people. So you're not superheroes, you're not superpowered. So it makes perfect sense what you're saying, that you only have 3 hit points. Combat is really deadly. It's a high risk. One element of the combat I'm curious about is, because always in the shows, the threat is if you get bitten and infected, because there's this looming threat that you're going to become infected and become one of the Walking Dead. So how does the game deal with that?
For starters, I would say that the game doesn't handle walkers as enemies in kind of a regular sense from most other games, where you have like you can attack a dragon or a zombie or the walkers are more handled as if there were to be a disease all over the world. They're kind of intended to be everywhere, and they're not handled as opponents in that sense. So you can kind of meet walkers in 2 different kind of ways. You could say that one thing is kind of a single attack. Something happened that makes one or a couple of walkers attack you. It's like you're trying to find some food, and then you mess up, and suddenly there's a walker or 2 coming out of the cupboard, or I don't know. And that is just handled as a skill roll. You do something to avoid them, or it could be the reverse. You see 2 walkers and you attack them because you need to kill them, and then you just roll a skill roll, whatever. And if that skill roll isn't successful, you roll on the bitten table. And the bitten table is like 66 entries where not everything is that you are bitten, because then you would die from 66 entries. So that wouldn't be any fun. But there is everything from kind of stumbling, losing something, managing to kind of fight them off, but you kind of hurt yourself with your weapon, to actually getting bitten, having to amputate like a leg or an arm, or to actually just dying. It's like roll a die. That many hours is how long you live. So that is kind of a central part of the game, the bitten table. But then there are kind of rules also for fighting the swarm. The swarm is kind of a saying for groups of walkers. So if you fight more than a handful, you kind of activate the rules for fighting the swarm, and then that is kind of managed in a round-based conflict where you try to kind of get away from them, and they come closer and closer, and yeah.
Okay, amazing. So it's an omnipresent threat in the world. You absolutely can get bitten. So that is a risk, just like in the actual world. With character death being such a big potential, how do you handle that in the game? When you're playing a campaign, do you give people multiple characters to create, or do you just have lots of backups ready if you're the game master, so ready to jump someone in? How do you handle that in the game?
From the start, you have like 5 NPC survivals in your group. So that is one part of that is creating like a tension and conflict that is really interpersonal and close. But that is also a bank from where you can take new characters. And actually, if you train your NPC survivors, if you train them in shooting you have the prison as a haven, and you start learning them how to shoot and stuff. If you die and grab one of those NPC survivors, you get more skill points from having training them in the campaign. So you can actually kind of build your bank of NPC survivors and as characters you can take later on.
Sure. As talking about combat, obviously fighting the zombies is a key part of The Walking Dead, but in the TV show we see a lot very quickly the survivors tend to learn how to deal with the zombies. They're like, okay, this is how that works. But other people become the issue. So are other people kind of the villains or like the monsters in The Walking Dead, like you'd have in other classic role-playing games? And how does that combat work? Yeah,
I would say that there are 2 ways of playing this game. There's like the campaign way and the kind of survival scenarios. And the campaign way is kind of the main thing for the game. That's what most of the kind of rules are about and so forth. And that is actually kind of a sandbox environment. There are rules for building a sandbox and creating factions and creating things on the map. So you don't really know from starters who will be enemies and who you will befriend, and there's a lot of kind of like randomness when you meet someone. You roll a die to see kind of how does he or she react to you and so forth. So kind of similar to like old school Renaissance games where the game master doesn't really decide that much. It's many tables and it's kind of randomized everything. So one answer to your question is that you don't know for starters who will be your foes and who will be your friends. That is kind of decided, and the game master doesn't know that either. The first campaign we played, there was a group of like 5 police officers they kind of encountered and they wanted to trade with, and I rolled kind of that they will betray them and take their stuff. So the police officer did that, and then
nice.
that just ended up being like a bloody conflict afterwards. But I mean, like if the dice had rolled in another way, I mean, so I mean, campaigns can be can end up in many different directions. You can go from like to building a society, attracting more survivors, creating technological stuff, to just a campaign about a group of 7 or 8 people dying one by one and just fleeing for their lives. And you don't know that from the start.
Sure.
But of course, you're right. Humans are like the main foes here, of course.
Yeah, other people. Hell is other people. When obviously combat and fighting the walkers is part of the game, but as you've mentioned, there's much more to the game. It's about survival because you're in this world. How is there a way to kind of manage resources and finding things you need? Like, are you gonna need fuel for your bikes? Do you have enough food, water, shelter? How does the game look at those aspects of the story?
I would say it's not a game. Excuse me. It's not a game with a lot of micromanagement and kind of. It's not a game where you kind of will count how many bottles of fuel you have, and
Sure.
so if that is what you find fun, you won't really get that. It's more based on what will be interesting fiction, what will become conflicts, so there could be challenges, as we call them in the game, about
Sure.
running out of ammo or running out of fuel, but that is more as an effect of fiction and time passing, and you're using your cars a lot, and there's no like you don't keep track of your ammunition, for
Sure.
instance.
Yeah. No
and
maths for it. Yeah.
no, and that is my goal of one of my goals when writing this game was to kind of emulate the TV series. I wanted it to be like this TV series. These TV series could have been played from this game. They could have been created by playing this game, and that is not how I see it. More as a horror soap opera than kind of a micromanaging war game. If you
Sure.
so
Absolutely.
that's the choice I've made about that.
And as you mentioned, characters' kind of connections with each other and the relationships they have is a really central part of the theme. And as you say, mechanically, it reduces stress. So what sort of stories, like I know the starter box set has some adventures. Obviously, you don't want to give too much away, but what sort of stories and adventures do people go on when they're playing the game?
In the starter set, there is one survival scenario. So that is the other way. I mean, the campaign way is one way of playing the game, and the survival scenarios are kind of like when you take a little part of a campaign and just play that out. You kind of set up the pieces like in an interesting way, and you just play that out. So it's as if you would be like Rick and the other people when they try to handle those thousands of zombies in the old mine, and kind of making them walk away, and they putting up the cars and that situation. That situation could be a survival scenario. So you kind of take like a small situation which is really kind of tense and dramatic, and you just make that a scenario. So those kind of the survival scenarios are intended to be like that, and as the title, survival scenarios, could very well end up dying. Of course, they should be dangerous.
Yeah. And I guess if you're doing a shorter survival scenario, you're kind of okay with your character dying, really, because it's not as obviously in a campaign. If you've gone through with your character, their death will be kind of quite meaningful and impactful. I'm sure.
Yeah.
But with the game, when you're running it in campaign mode, obviously the main book has lots of rules, like you say, about running the campaign. What advice do you have for game masters wanting to approach the game? Because like you say, not a lot is set at the beginning. You have a sandbox style world. There's lots of things in it, but you don't know who the enemies are and, who the good guys are. So what guidance can you give to people running the game?
I would say if you have run sandbox games based on factions, you will kind of recognize these things. You will kind of, I get it. But if you haven't, I would say don't just try out the games, the kind of the mechanics in the game, and make it small scale. Just start out with a haven and some NPCs, and then build some faction and just see what happens, so that you don't kind of think about kind of a scenario way of playing and add that to the game, because I don't think that would kind of be a good match, really. If you had kind of, this should be about this and that and this happening. One of the nice things about this game is just letting things happen, and for the game master not being in control of that.
Just reacting to what the players want to do and kind of what they're engaged with.
And building the world between sessions, and just setting up factions and don't knowing if they will become the enemy or the friend.
Do you often have players helping set up the factions as well? Is it open to kind of more collaborative world building with the table? Or?
I wouldn't say the factions, because I think it's important that they are secrets. It should be like kind of a secret, scary world out there. So I wouldn't engage them in. No, I wouldn't. Perhaps in kind of defining the NPC survivors in the haven, and I often let them kind of describe their starting haven.
In Alien, what I love about that game is the way, like in the movies, it builds tension and horror of this unknown in the game. So, what approach to horror does The Walking Dead have? Because, like you say, in some ways it's similar to Alien because it does have horror, but again, it's got a slightly different tone. So, how does it feel different if people are used to playing Alien and liked that game?
I think Alien kind of looks for a certain type of horror and does that very good, kind of this scary tension, and then they just jump out and you're dead meat. So, but I would say that both Walking Dead as a TV series and kind of the Walker or zombie genre, and this game has horror on many different levels. I mean, there is the whole apocalypse level of it. The world is abandoned, it's empty, you're all alone. There is no one to help you with your wounds because there aren't any ambulances.
Oh yeah,
it's
hospitals.
No hospitals. Or if there are,
you don't want to go there.
No, exactly.
We've all seen the first episode of The Walking Dead. We learn that that's not good.
No. Yeah. And I mean, then there's the human, as you were saying, the human horror, like the bestiality of humans under pressure, what humans will do to each other, either under pressure or if they are not constrained. So just seeing that. And of course, there's the jump scare of walkers, like coming out from somewhere. But I mean, there's also the kind of the level of that the walkers have been humans once, and I am a human as well, and I could become that. And
I imagine if some of the walkers are people that the player characters know as well, because that's when I've run zombie games, that's always I was going to say a fun thing to throw in, but fun's maybe the wrong word. Fun for me is the game master, maybe. But it's that level.
Yeah, but something happens inside of you when you see that, definitely.
For sure.
And I think also this kind of that the walkers are kind of like a flood or a disease. I mean, that's one thing I like with the TV series, when they're kind of moving outside of their base. The walkers never kind of left them alone. There is always someone coming, and someone, you hear the noise, and it's like they can never relax, and just watching that makes me nervous, kind of.
Yeah, because at any moment it could go wrong. We briefly talked about hospitals as locations, and I assume there'll be some in the city, and they can discover that they're terrible places. But that had me thinking about, how does healing work in the game? Because if you don't have because people only have 3 hit points, as you say. What if they've taken 2 hit points of damage and you're just holding on? Is there healing mechanics in the game, and how do you recover those points?
You heal one point each day. And that's a good place to say that this is kind of in one way, an abstract game. Everything that happens can kind of be interpreted, and should be interpreted by the group. So you kind of create your reality together at the gaming table. So getting 2 points of damage could be just getting hit to the ground, but it could be like a bleeding wound, and that's up to the group to decide.
So it's just a narrative. Yeah.
Exactly. But then you can get critical damage as well. So if you get your 3 hit points, you need to roll on the critical damage table, and then you can get some really serious things that kind of take months to heal up. And for many types of damage, you need advanced medical equipment, and most group won't have that. So then you get kind of a mission or a scenario. Your character is dying, we need to find advanced medical equipment. We don't know how many weeks or days we have. So that is one way to get things happening. And
put the pressure on. Also sounds like a great idea for if a player's going to be away for a few weeks in real life. You're like, okay, they're going to be injured, and the rest of you have to go off and help them. So just thinking of that, it seems like I love a sandbox style game, and like kind of an open world. So I'm really excited to kind of pick this up and play it. How accessible do you think it is to new players? Because the great thing about The Walking Dead is a lot of people that perhaps new to role-playing games will know the TV show, and so might be interested in playing that way. Do you have any advice for welcoming kind of new players to role-playing games via this game?
I think it is a good game for new players, because there aren't that many rules. A lot of it is kind of decided at the table and talked about. it's not complicated, and you don't have to kind of choose between 100 different talents. There are kind of few, and you also play a human being, which is, for some people at least, easier than trying to imagining something else. You have like your basic urges or wants. You need to get food, you need to have friends, you need to have blankets because winter is coming, and so forth. But perhaps it's a game that could be, if you come from kind of playing role-playing games that are very much about the mechanical things, and that tend to not be narrative, to be like, if I roll to attack, that means I stab you once. If you're in that kind of mindset, it could be kind of that you need to kind of adjust to this type of game. Rolling for an attack here could mean like shooting 5 bullets, running around the car, shooting one more, crawling there, and that is your entire attack. So yeah, you get it.
So it's more kind of narrative and freeform. So the mechanics obviously support the game, but it is like very much like what you want to add your flavor and add the genre. Yeah. For me, I always think somebody new to role playing, if you can give them a topic or a genre that they know and they're involved in, then they enjoy it, because you get to say, hey, that TV show you really like, do you want to be a character and walk around in that world? And then if they know the world, then it's much easier for them to make decisions. And even if they're not big Walking Dead fans, I imagine everybody knows the zombie genre. We know what a zombie is, and that sort of thing. So I guess it's quite welcoming in that sense. Well, I backed the Kickstarter, and I'm very excited to get my copy next month. So I'm very much looking forward to it. Do you have any closing words or anything else about the game you want to make sure people know about it before they get their hands on a copy?
I don't know. I think it's really fun, but I mean, I'm kind of biased in that. We had a lot of fun playing campaigns set in Sweden, and kind of that was a really nice thing to do, to kind of get the feel of the TV series, but located in my hometown or in the Swedish forests. And so I think that kind of, that was an interesting experience, to get that mix of a different place, but the same kind of type of stories. So that is something I am excited to hear about, people playing in different locations and seeing what happens when you place the game in different places.
Absolutely.
On a boat, for instance, or I don't know, in the desert.
Different environments, for sure. Well, Nils, thank you so much for coming back on the show and sharing The Walking Dead with us. I'm very excited to get my copy. Again, if people are watching, the link is in the show notes to thewalkingdead-rpg.com, where you can find out more and get a copy. And if you're watching live, it's on the screen for you now. I also, as a last question, you kind of mentioned some campaigns you're in at the beginning, but I do ask if you have any other games you want to give a recommendation or a shout out to that you're enjoying. Do you have any more beyond the 3 campaigns you're in at the moment, or would those be your recommendations for this visit?
I don't know, actually.
I've put you on the spot now, that's the thing.
No, I'm sorry, I can't really.
That's okay. So just the 3 from the beginning. So the three from the beginning.
But I love a lot of different games. I love Call of Cthulhu and Cult, and a lot of different games. So Mutant Year Zero is a great game, I think.
Fantastic. Well, there we go. There's a few little recommendations for people to get them started. So Nils, thank you so much for giving up your time and coming to talk to me again. Hopefully in the future you'll be bringing out another fantastic game, and I can have you back maybe next year to talk about that again another time.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Bye.
Bye.